Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy podcast. I'm your host, Shayna Davis. I'm so glad that you're here today. But before we get started, I want you to do me a favor. So, wherever it is that you are listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot. With that screenshot, I want you to post it on LinkedIn and then I just want you to tag me. And the reason why I do this is because, in my opinion, there are far too many leaders that just don't know how to cultivate and build the external influence that I think that the new world demands. And every time we share these episodes, it will expose them to the signals that they need to develop in order to lead better. So I appreciate you being willing to do that. I'm going to read my guest's bio and then we are going to get to what I believe will be another great conversation. My guest today is a leadership communications coach helping leaders amplify their influence and impact. He's coached leaders presenting at the United Nations, guided startup founders and investors through fundraising rounds, including one that raised $100 million over their goal, and has helped biopharma and nuclear scientists present their work globally. With emphasis on frameworks, principles, and techniques, he supports leaders in connecting authentically and navigating high stakes engagements with confidence. His book, Clear and Compelling, was picked up by a New York publisher and scheduled for re release spring 2026. It combines his research into neuroscience, psychology, and organizational behavior and decades of coaching into practical strategies for turning insights into influence. He's passionate about fostering collaborative team environments that integrate diverse perspectives through effective communication. I am excited to welcome to the show Salvatore Manzi.
Shayna, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
If I don't get to say anything else except Salvatore Manzi, then I've done my job for the day.
That's beautiful. And you say it beautifully too, by the way.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Well, I'm so glad that you're here because one of the things that, if people have listened before, that they know about me, and if this is your first time listening, you know that one of the things that I do through my show and through my firm is that we actually help leaders of teams represent their company with trust and credibility externally. And today we're really going to be talking about how you build trust before you speak. And just for context for the listeners, when we say speak externally, I want you to think about times that you, as the leader or the leaders within your organization, have to have any conversation outside of the four walls of your organization. Whether it's someone in HR that has to talk to a potential employee, whether it is someone on your technical team that has to have a conversation with investors about how what you're building is going to revolutionize, their industry. If your leaders are on LinkedIn, if they're on panels, if they're being interviewed by the media, anytime they have to communicate outside of the four walls, we want to make sure that they've actually built trust. And the reason why I think that is important, Salvatore, is because right now we are in a trust recession, if we can call it that. Like, trust gaps are widening. People don't trust anyone anymore. And our leaders have to make sure that they're doing everything they can, because I believe that the companies that are going to win, especially like in this next decade, with the trust gaps widening and tech disrupting everyone, it's going to be the leaders who are like visible and credible that are that are the companies that are going to win. So when we think about this concept of building trust before excuse me, before you speak, who exactly needs to trust you first externally?
Who needs to trust you first
Yeah,
externally?
yeah. Or not necessarily first in order, but like, who needs to trust you before you can actually be able to influence or impact them externally?
I think there needs to be a certain amount of self-trust in there.
Mm,
Like, I feel competent and confident in my role and representing who I represent. I think there's that. I think there wants to be people that need to trust you. There's so many. I mean, and as you were speaking, I was also thinking how artificial intelligence has shaped the way communication is happening written form.
yes.
And right now, when we have the chance to actually engage and watch a leader speak, it's that separate moment. It's not AI. This is the
Yeah.
authentic self. And that's when trust gets built, is in
Hmm.
those moments. So.
One of the
Um,
things that I see, and I'm curious if you see this with the companies that you work, and it lends itself back to what you were saying about being able to have self-trust. Far too often, and the foundation of the work that I do with companies is far too often the leader knows very well how to speak to the values of the company, the product or service of the company, what it is that the company has done, is doing, and will do. But very little have they actually taken the time to ask themselves, but what is my unique point
oh,
of view about
it's
the
so real.
industry that I'm in, or where the industry is going, or what it is that we're building? And in my
Yes,
opinion, I think that one of the ways that you can erode trust is only being able to regurgitate, quite frankly, what most people can find on the website. Do you see that with the types of companies you work with?
100%. And I think that our society is built to train people to be soldiers of their organization. I'm going out with marching orders, with talking points. I'm going to speak these things. If I'm a team lead internally, I'm going to share the message from above to below. And we lack that human element, that connection to what is it about that leader that's showing up to embody that mission, that
Yeah,
vision that the organization has, the products that are being served, but what's the purpose of
yeah,
that? And in my book, I do go over a values sheet until a person really knows what their core values are. They can't make the connection between what their organization is doing and what they believe in. And
yeah,
once they do, they can connect the two and speak about what their company is doing in a much more effective and powerful way.
yeah. I find it fascinating. And this is kind of my soapbox moment, if you'll give me a second. I
Take it.
find it fascinating that because when you're talking about like uncovering like your values, etc., I think that's so much part of like what is your identity? And the very first step that I
Mm,
take people through is like, what is your leadership identity?
I
And I
like
find
this.
it fascinating that the number one question, the research has proven this, the number one question that human beings have is who am I?
Mm,
But it's the very last thing that most companies want to develop. So
mm,
you bring in these communication trainers, or you have a VP of comms within your organization, and you wonder why, despite them getting them mic and camera ready, and despite them giving them the talking points that you've just mentioned that they give them to memorize, why it still falls flat. And it's because it's very seldom going to hit the way you want it to hit beyond that moment if you don't first help them discover what it is that you said. You flat out said it's very difficult for them to connect what it is that the company is doing if they can't answer those questions for themselves. But
it's
people
true.
poo poo on that. The companies that I talk to, they're like, oh, we don't need that. Just give them these talking points and practice them. Okay.
It's true because they want, in some ways, they want them to perform. They want them to be a great actor. They want them to
Yeah.
go in front of the camera and put on the production and performance and use these talking points and show up this way and have this presence. But the reality is, presence is defined by one's self-awareness. If
Wow.
they don't know who they are, they can't bring forth those talking points in any way other than a robotic. And if they're a good actor, they can pretend, but sooner or later, the authenticity is going to crack through and people are going to lose that trust fast.
Yeah. What are some of the signals that tell the market that a leader is credible before they ever even speak a word?
Number one, listening.
Mm,
Presence starts with listening. If I'm dancing with somebody, conversations are like a dance. And if
yeah.
I'm dancing with somebody, if I'm only paying attention to my feet, I'm going to step on toes. But if I'm listening to the rhythm and the movement and the flow, then there is good dancing happening. Same thing with presence. If I am listening to the other person, tuning into, putting myself in their shoes for a minute, and then sharing my perspective from that, then there's a bridge, there's a connection, there's trust being built.
Yeah. And like we were saying, and if the only thing that you're equipped to talk about are the talking points that you've practiced,
Mm.
then someone says something or they ask something, and then that's when you start to look like you don't confidently know what you're doing or what it is the company is doing because you haven't thought about what your perspective is. You haven't thought about anything beyond, the things that you have rehearsed. And if we're talking about trust, I don't know that I trust a company that their leader can't even have a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
where's
Yeah.
this company going?
It's so real.
Do
I
I
know
want
that
to work there? Do I
I
want to,
don't
do I want to buy from them? Do I
do I
want to trust my money with them?
am I going
Probably
to
not.
invest in this? No. And to your point, I know you do a lot of communication training as well. One of my favorite communication training modules is Q&A, navigating Q&A, because to your point, if all they have is talking points,
Yeah,
they're listening for the question that connects to the talking point and they're going to rote repeat what they've been taught to
yeah,
say. And that does not build trust. And I love Q&A so much because it's in that middle part between the question and the answer where trust gets built. If a person can truly listen to the questioner and then build relevance, build a connection to their world and the talking point, and then deliver the talking point, it's so much more effective.
right. And if you're the person that is asking the questions, because there's been times that I've been to events where someone is moderating a panel, and I
Mm,
can't understand for the life of me why that person was selected to moderate the panel, because the
yeah.
only thing that they're really doing is just asking the questions in order that they've already been curated.
Oh, I hear
And
what you're
what you're saying is that if they're really listening to what it is that the people are saying, it should spark them to ask questions that aren't on the paper. It should spark them to go deeper in the conversation that they're currently having or completely abandon some of the questions that are on the paper because now the conversation is going in the direction that quite organically it should have gone that you really just can't script out.
It's so true. And I think that panel moderation is one of the most difficult arenas for a
Yeah,
communicator because there's the balance of context. Like, okay, this person just shared something. How far can I go? What's the actual point of this? How deep can I go with this person? How much trust do I have to bring it up? There's so much going on in their mind, and it's easy just to revert to, okay, next question. What is, and then
yeah,
drop. Right? Without practice, the poor moderator is going to sound very robotic. And
right.
again, back to listening
Yeah.
and then validating or acknowledging what they heard and then diving deeper if they can.
So if trust is one of the credibility markers,
Yeah.
what is one of the biggest trust leaks that most leaders overlook?
The biggest trust leak.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by trust leak. Oh, what
So
causes the person to lose
so if
trust?
credibility, if trust is one of the things that builds credibility and trust, what's one of the things that can tank it that most leaders overlook?
Like, I'm gonna say something that's gonna be very unpopular, but it's I think very true, and that is tone of voice. A lot of leaders that I work with don't want to work on their voice as much, or they discount the impact of their voice, but a their voice can convey so much when they are communicating at the same line delivered with a different tone of voice, cadence, pitch, volume, communicate something different. It's the voice that gives meaning to the talking points.
Right.
And too often times a person is rote remembering or repeating a line, but failing to imbue it with their own personal sense of meaning with their voice, and that discounts trust. I don't know if you've ever come onto a virtual call and somebody was like, "Hi everyone, it's really great to see you. I'm glad you're here today. I'm going to be with you." And they're not even looking at the camera. They're just like repeating the standard opening of a Zoom call or whatever. But you can feel the lack of trust. Like, why would
Yeah.
I believe you? You're
Right.
not even communicating in a way that makes me believe you're saying what you're saying.
Yeah. So when it comes to the tone inflection, is there is it as simple as just being natural and speaking the way that you would speak if you were just on the couch with a friend? Or are there certain strategies? Like if you're trying to emphasize this type of point, you go up at the end. Or like I had someone a couple of weeks ago that gave the example of, people that everything they say they go up at the end,
Yup.
like they're asking a question at the end of everything. Like, and it's like, it's a statement, it's not a question. So, are there certain things that if you're trying to convey X, that this is what you should take into consideration when it comes to tone? Or is it
Yes.
as simple as let's just be natural and talk like you would talk if you weren't on?
I want to say let's just be natural. However, in the context of a high stakes situation, you can't be natural. Like your adrenaline, cortisone is flowing, your amygdala has gone into fight, flight, freeze. It's hard for what person to be natural. So we have to prepare ourselves for those situations. And when I'm working with a client, I do take them through a series of vocal exercises to get
Mhm.
them aware of how their voice is showing up in different places and train them to slow down, to speed up, to use a higher volume, to change their pitch and become deliberate with their tone of voice throughout. It takes practice,
Yeah.
but as a person gets used to varying their voice as they speak, they can imbue any other content with that same sense of personal meaning as well.
Yeah. I think it's definitely something that someone needs to teach you if you don't do it quite naturally.
It,
Like it's
it
something that they need to work with you on. If they know that that's not their jam, or they've listened to themselves back and they recognize that they speak in the same tone or the wrong tone, or somebody points it out, that's definitely something that you guys need to hire Salvatore Manzi for, because it's a skill that everybody does not have, but it is a skill that can be cultivated and built.
Agreed. And I want to put, I'm not a vocal coach. There are vocal coaches out there that are amazing, and I highly recommend going to them. But if I'm working with a person around communications, we're going to spend time
We're going to spend
on
some time on
vocal
that.
variety because where is the voice coming from? If
Yeah,
I'm nervous, I'm going to bring my voice all right higher and higher until I'm talking like this in my head, versus if I let it go all the way into my body and let it become an embodied voice.
right.
People resonate, they feel that resonance, and that begins to build trust with the audience.
I love that. One of the things that I'm a big proponent of, when it comes to the individual leader, is I try to inspire them to recognize that although they work for a brand, they're still a brand with
Mm,
inside of that company. I
mm.
also think that people should be thinking about their futures, and they should be thinking about, what do I want to be known for? What might I want to do if I'm no longer employed here, et cetera, et cetera. I think they should be thinking about how the way that they build trust, and how the way that they speak, and how the way that they engage externally is also helping to define them as authority in their spaces. It's helping to define them as authority inside of their companies, but it's also helping to, or can help to define them as authorities just in their industry or in their field. And so I'm curious, like, how, in your opinion, of the type of work that you do and the things that you've seen, how does someone go beyond, and if you're watching the video, I'm air quoting, but like, how do they move from representing the company to being seen as an authority in their space when they're looking at the way that they communicate and build trust? Where does that come into play?
How do they communicate in a way that builds trust and builds their legacy as
Yes.
well?
Yes.
And it's for me, again, in my book, I have the values exercise, and then the next exercise is the mission statement. When a person has a personal mission statement based on their personal values, then they can look long term. If I don't know where I'm going,
Mm,
I'm just wandering along, just like reacting to everything. But if
yeah.
I have an end goal in mind, then I've got a purpose and I keep myself focused. And I'm not reacting, I'm responding in
Yes.
line with where I want to go. So, in order to build trust and to build a long-term legacy, one needs to have a sense of their values, a sense of their mission, and a sense of their end goal so that they can align the three and communicate from that place of like, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I know how I can help you all get there with me.
Yeah. So I have a question that may not be an easy one for you to answer.
I love it. It's a test.
So you have this amazing book, Clear and Compelling. And I haven't read it, but my gut tells me that there's a lot of great tips in there. I want to know, if there's a leader that is listening to this show, because we've shared a lot of things that they should do and a lot of things that they should attempt to avoid, but if they were looking to make one small shift immediately, what is your either favorite or best tip that is in your book that you would want them to try to implement right away?
Wow. My favorite and best, you're right. It is
Either
a
your favorite
challenging.
or your
Yeah.
best. Now, I know you're biased, you love all of them.
It's it is so personal too to the individual and how they're going to use the book. The book is filled with individual strategies that you
Okay.
can just open the book, try a strategy for a day, for a week, see how it feels, and build up. The strategy that I would offer anybody is the idea of uh, s- signaling.
Mm,
Watch how you're signaling in terms of agency to relational. We all have the opportunity we know how to behave in certain situations. We've been conditioned by society on what behaviors are appropriate to the context of which we're in. Problem is that conditioning creates a habitual way of showing up, not always the signal that we want to send.
yeah.
So practice asking yourself, how do I want to show up in this meeting before you get there? Notice what happens in the meeting that causes you to reflexively behave in a certain way. Ask yourself, is that the right behavior? Perhaps you need to take up more space. Perhaps you need to speak louder. Perhaps you need to lean in and make your point. There are ways physically, vocally, and with your content to show and demonstrate more agency in situations than you likely are using because you've been conditioned to show up a certain way to deflect and show respect to authority. I would invite anybody listening. Watch how you're signaling when you're in a meeting. Is it out of habit or out of intention? Set an intention first, try something different in that engagement, and then reflect afterwards. How did that work? How can I use this in other situations? And then you'll elevate your entire seeming sense of authority and presence out in the world.
I love that tip, and let me tell you why. I love it because it requires most of us to build a muscle that we don't have, that we need to have, and that is actually planning and preparing.
Mm.
So oftentimes, and usually it comes out of necessity because we're so busy and we're running from one thing to the next, that we're not making the space, whether we have to do it the night before, the morning of, or 5 minutes before we're going into whatever the thing is. We're not making the space to actually think about how we're going to signal before we get in the room, or being able to prepare properly for what could potentially be expected of us when we get in the situation. So then by default we're forced to only be reactive. And so I love that tip because it's going to force us to develop a muscle that many of us are just atrophied in.
It's it's hard to take that time, but even 10 seconds before a conversation to say, what do I want to get out of this? What do I want them to think and feel and walk away with? It's a game changer to the direction of that engagement. It's real.
It is, and it's something that anyone and everyone can apply right now. It's not
Yeah.
something that you have to think about. It's not something that you have to do study or research. Like, it's something that every single person can implement right now. So I appreciate you sharing that. So as we begin to wrap up, if people want to follow you on social media, where would you like them to follow you?
LinkedIn. Go to
Okay.
Salvatore Manzi at LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you and hear how things are going in your world.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that the link to that is in the show notes. And then if people want to take things further with you, what would you like to offer them?
I have a resource library that has many of my frameworks and many strategies for leaders who need to communicate in various contexts. That resource library is available on my website. If you go to clearingcompellingplaybook.com, you can access the whole library yourself.
Okay, perfect. Well, I am going to make sure that the link to your LinkedIn and the link to get the playbook for the resources is in the show notes. So all people have to do is click them. I thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your nuggets and wisdom. I know that this episode is going to be a hit. Everyone, share this with every leader that you know, because These are game changing strategies that Salvatore is mentioning. And it's not just about career growth, it literally can make or break whether or not your company is going to stand out and win amidst all the headwinds that we are experiencing right now. So, share this. I hope that you will go back and listen to previous and future episodes as well. Everyone, have a great day. Bye bye.